I realize I'm in between you and your lunch, so I have to be smart about this. I'm from 3DI, and so what we're going to talk about is maybe a little different, but maybe the same. We've had some successes with mobile deployments, and I'm going to take a case study and talk about the fact that no matter what you do, if your users don't use it, it doesn't really matter. And this is particularly unforgiving in the case of mobile. You have 90% of your applications that you download, you will never use even twice. So you download them, you look at them, and then that's it. And so this user experience is really critical, even though ultimately it's tied to technology in the back and platforms and so on. So I'm going to try to bring the focus around user experience today. So, in the past decade, sort of lots of mobile apps got built, mostly tactically. I think even today, you see a lot of apps being built tactically. Somebody says, we got to have a mobile app for that, and we got to have a mobile app for that. And you end up building something that probably fixes a solution, and sometimes it's even focused. But the difficulty with that is that you get this rapid explosion of applications, especially with large departments, large organizations. You get 17 different apps, so which one is the real app? Which one should I use? Like in a city, there might be a permitting app, then there is a 311 app, and there is another app. So that was kind of how it was going. So now I think organizations are beginning to define, and that's probably why we're all here, is that defining a sort of implementation strategy. They're coming up with like, how do I do this so it's consistent, it grows, given the changes and sort of more maturity that's around mobility today than there was say 10 years ago or 5 years ago, even last year, right? So it's becoming more of a mobile-enabled enterprise. And of course, we still talk mobile as if it's different from any other presentation layer. The fact is, it's really just another presentation layer. And so, these are different components of the strategy. You think about the policies. How are we going to do a BYOD? We're going to do how are we going to manage deployments? How are we going to do management once it's deployed? All of these things are like a policy type of issues that really nothing to do with the technology. In some ways, they do actually sometimes. You also think about what technology platform are we going to be in? Are we open source? Are we going with a proprietary platform? Are we actually going to be on cloud? Is there a private cloud? All that stuff. So there's all technology conversations that go on. But we often don't talk as much about user experience as if it's something we'll do after we figure it all this stuff out. But the reality is that if you don't use it, you haven't got anything. So let's first think about like how do we, for a minute, just let's put everything you're building around your platform in that little red circle, white circle. So it's your enterprise application platform that's going to enable your mobile application. Fact is, you really can't think of the mobile app by itself. There is no such thing as a mobile app by itself. There are a few things that you could do, but by and large, it is connected to something, which is usually an integration point of some kind, which in turn is tied to your operations, which is touched by many, many people. So this data really has, so that platform could be many of these things, and I apologize for this really bad color. So we'll come back to it. But it's basically your SOA platform, it's your BPM platform, it's your identity management, it's your single sign-on. You want a multilingual platform of some kind. You've got ADA compliance across the platform. So these are things that you think about in your middle tier that actually ties to all your organizational platforms. But that's really not how your customer or your internal organization looks at it, does it? There's really kind of a customer view of it, and there is sort of an enterprise view to it. They come through you through portals, they come through you through mobile apps, they come through you through various channels. And regardless of which channel they come through, their experience has to be consistent. I walk up to a window, apply for a permit, I go back and check the status of the permit. Well, it needs to be the same information. So if it is not integrated in that platform which ties to the application, you got nothing. Right. Similarly, if you look at the operations side of it, the application actually might be an intranet or where it surfaces itself. It could be any device. It could be that a field agent actually looks at it on an iPad, and of course, your operations chief might look at it this way. An elected official might actually be looking at something in their council district and saying, how is my district doing across that? Same information being presented in different ways depending on the user roles. And that's really the basis of user experience. Really, there's very little to do with this. It's actually how people perceive in their own roles and such. Okay. So here is some kind of interesting thing to keep in mind. We all know mobile use is just booming. I think 6 out of 7 people in the world now have mobile phone of some kind, which is a pretty large number. And of course, mobile is increasingly becoming like a primary way to get things done. And it's an expectation, not a sort of driven by us. The user experience is, of course, everything. Now, why is that? Because perception is now measured in milliseconds. You look at something and say, I don't like it, and you move on. Okay. The fact is that you get exactly one chance to make the first good impression. There is not like, oh, we'll release another version tomorrow that will be better. There's no such thing. People give you one chance and you're away. If you didn't like Yelp the first time, you don't use the Yelp, I promise you. Okay. And there's nothing like, well, now the Yelp has gotten better. There's no such thing. Okay, it's gone. There's 100 other options. And then there's this once and done, kind of an approach. So if you actually download an application and try to make one single service request and it didn't work, then you're done, right? So and then another key thing is that this comes from the platform is that as we are getting more and more aware of security, we're getting into authenticated users, the security becomes a very key conversation in these things. But security has to be balanced with user experience. There are applications that require you to do so many things before they become enabled, it's almost not worth using them, and they get in the way. But 3 is kind of very important. We talked about that, and this is not really the focus of conversation today, is that how do you integrate that back up to the back end? It's also part of user experience. And finally, the 4th one, and this also comes from our experience in deploying things with large clients, is that a mobile app is really never done. This idea that we will do it, deploy it, and then sort of wait for a couple of years and do another one doesn't exist. If you don't deploy, as often as it needs to be deployed, it could be weeks, days, typically, month or so. And so I'll give you an example. In the city of Los Angeles, we built the 311 app. And we initially thought, hey, let's get a version up there, then we'll look at it in a few months. Well, within days, there was something else we wanted to do. We started doing a lot of analytics on the usage. We realized that people don't use a certain button. Why is that? We realized that, hey, there's a certain type of request that seems to be more frequent than the other. So maybe we should move it up. We decided to add some more features. Hey, another department now wants to get on. So this idea of a static application doesn't exist. Just look at any of the apps you own. There's constantly an update thing going on, and you almost sort of resigned to the fact that I don't want to actually be told anymore. Just update it, please. Okay, and then and so everybody initially, how many of you have gone there and said, no, inform me when there's an update? First time all of us did that, right? Inform me when there's an update because I don't know what you're going to do to me. Well, 6 months into it, he said, just please update it. I actually can't keep up with you anymore. So that's really the point is that comes from that. And if you're not ready for that, platform sense, in a sense of how development goes, you really are not prepared for it. So whether you're preparing the user experience, so on has to be consistent. So what is UX, right? So 5 years ago, I would have asked you this, and nobody in the room many people would say, what is UX? What's that short for? And in fact, today, I think almost everybody sort of just automatically knows UX. In fact, it's like a part of parlance. It'll probably show up in Oxford Dictionary, pretty soon. So UX is really user experience. But contrary to what we normally think, a lot of people think it's visual design. So that's another challenge. A lot of people think user experience is just make it pretty, which is not at all the case. I think it's actually a combination of 2 things. It's information architecture and it's visual design. And there's a reason why I put that on the left and the right side. It's really the left brain and the right brain kind of a conversation. So information architecture really consists of a lot of things. It's almost all the things that you don't think of when you think of user experience initially. Fact is that your entire business requirement process is user experience. So when we say, oh, we'll do UI by these guys, and we'll do user experience by these guys, and we'll do requirements by somebody else, you really don't know what you're doing then, because fact is it's all integrated into one single platform. So you start with business requirements. What are we trying to build? But what's also important is what is our KPI? How will you know you're successful? So often people say, we'll do business requirements, but they don't decide how they're going to be successful. I'll give you an example. In Los Angeles, when we deployed the app, for which I'm going to talk to you about a little more, the KPI was not how good it is or how many people download it. That doesn't do us any good. We get 1.5 million phone calls a year. A call costs $10 a call, right? So all we wanted to do was, hey, can we take this down by about 5%? Can we take that? That's actually a better metric than saying 100,000 people downloaded it, right? And so tying this is kind of important. There's another interesting metric that we tied to, which is actually an internal measurement metric. We use some tools that track when do people use it, in the morning, in the evening. What do they touch more often? So we actually started tracking that. So we actually built out what tools should we use was actually one of the metrics. So what should we measure in these apps, that's going to be relevant, because a couple of years ago, even that didn't seem like the there's a solution for it. So based on that, we decide what are the focus groups. Who are the users? Is it the citizen? Is it our intranet person? Is it our field staff? And based on that focus group, you start developing the requirements. From there, you generate a persona. Because no matter how much you represent a particular focus group, you're just you. I'm just me. And in fact, I need to know what that person in that role does. What does a person driving in a car who sees a trash spillage really look for? What kind of convenience would they be looking for when they're doing that? That's a very different question than saying, what does Rajiv look for when he's driving out of the car, even though I'm part of the focus group. So extracting that particular user focus information to actually persona is a very big step, and it's a somewhat complicated step. And from there, you actually develop these workflows. What do they do when they do that? Are they holding it in a hand? Are they able to actually set it down? From all kinds of considerations, from usage analysis to what kind of information they might have in that particular context of mobility. An example like that is we built a portal for Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. That's where people go pay their bills and so on. Say, let's build a mobile site and say, let's just make it responsive. What does that mean? Are you really going to look at the whole website? When do you actually think of your utilities website on a phone, right? When somebody calls and says, we better pay the bill today or we're not going to have electricity tomorrow morning. So the context, otherwise, why would you be thinking of a utility, for God's sake, on a mobile phone? Or there's an outage. Hey, is the outage in my kid's school area? So the relevance of the information is very important in the context of the phone or context of the mobile. So that all comes from the workflows, and from there you build the use cases. And then you apply you develop the taxonomy, and you do comparative analysis, like, has somebody else done this? Is there a feature functionality matrix that, am I just cluttering this with 17 things that I need? What is more important? What is less important? That's comparative analysis. And ultimately that generates wireframes. So what is wireframe? It's actually a clickable application. Nothing has been built yet, but you can actually walk through the entire application. You can focus group it again. You can actually work it with the end users. As a result, what happens is that, and you might say, that looks kind of ugly. What is all this stuff notation? What's all this? But actually this app you could run through completely on the screen. And why would you do that? Well, you do that because now you're actually interacting around the use cases you build. It's purposely not colored. It purposely doesn't say what it's going to look like. You might say, why? It's by design somewhat ugly. This is functional. It's a functional design of how it will work. It's a placement criteria that have been applied to it. There are some weightages for the different real estates. This is very important real estate in a mobile phone, or this is more actually depending on if you're left-handed or right-handed and so on. So what happens is that you come through this and you decide that this is what we're going to do. With the user, you've reached a point where they agree that when we build this, we're going to use it. And you haven't even decided how it's going to look. So this is very different from what you might have thought a user experience might actually work like. Then starts the other side of the brain. This is when creative approaches start. Hey, we have a certain branding model. We come from we have a certain color structure we like. I like pink, you like blue. All that is very relative. And things change. In Christmas, we put other colors and all that stuff. How does that change the functional requirement of the left side? And remember what we talked about before. The application is constantly growing over time. So if you hadn't done the left thing right, you'd be writing this application every single time. Okay. Then from that you generate comps, which generates style guides and so on and so forth. That's a creative process, and ultimately end up with that. So the same screens now actually looking the way they look in the case of an implementation, and we still haven't implemented anything. Right? So all this process went into deciding what will it look like, how will it work, how will people use it, and then you get to this point. And then finally, of course, all this gets put together and implemented. So when people ask questions like, wait a minute, what platform did you use to develop this app? Doesn't matter. I could have used Sencha, or I could have used Oracle ADF Mobile, which in some of these cases I did. But what really matters is how did I get this far? And if you didn't do all those pieces, it almost doesn't matter what you use. So we get caught up in questions like, well, I want to make it so that I don't have to compile it twice. Believe me, the effort it takes to write 2 native apps on Android and iPhone is a lot less than the effort that went before that. Okay, so it really doesn't matter that much. What really important is that you get that part right. So user experience really does make a very big difference. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of quick, because depending on the time, I'm going to talk to you about a few of these apps, and they're from different contexts. So we have MyLA 311. This is actually an application that was deployed about a year ago, a little over a year ago. There's a booth, the City of Los Angeles is here today, and they're showing off this app. It was an interesting case. City of Los Angeles, as you know, is a very large city, second largest in our country. And one of the primary issue was really that they wanted a common mobility platform for the city. Why? Or for an enterprise, why is this a good thing? But in the City of Los Angeles, first of all, even officially there are about 50 apps. Every department goes and makes one, right? There were actually unofficially more than 100 apps, right? So how do you know which one I should pick? Like when you go and do LA on the iTunes store, 100 apps show up. Which one should I use? How do I know where to start? More importantly, as we are moving into the second phase of which I'll talk to you about, what starts happening is that let's say I have an authenticated user. Which one should I authenticate against? Do I want 17 logins and passwords? So how do I manage that? So one of the goals was to create a common platform, but that immediately creates a very big problem. You got a city the size of Los Angeles, where each department is like a city. So how do you bring so much information in a small platform? And this is where the user experience counts. What do people really want to do when they get to an app like that? And that's how we started that. Then the other, of course, kind of a business requirement was that we want to reduce the call volume for 311. I know with the cuts and so on, one of the key goals for the city was that the user experience that comes to the city and to the customer, to the citizen, is very poor over a phone call. Not just because, hey, I'm upset my tree has not been trimmed, but so where is your tree, sir? In front of my house. Okay, well, where is your house? It's on this street, but that my GIS system doesn't validate that address. What do I say now, sir? And so errors, getting information across, capturing that, follow-ups. Hey, I'm calling about the tree you're supposed to trim. Which requests are? Okay, 17 people calling about the same graffiti. How do you make sure that it all falls in place? So all these issues that we all are quite aware of, managing all that, actually ultimately cuts down the call volume, actually improves the quality of experience, and maintain the quality of experience across different channels. So whether they call later on, or they actually come through the mobile or come through the MyLA portal. The one thing you'll notice is that in front of everything, I'm putting this thing called MyLA. So what is that? Why didn't we just call it LA 311 or 311? We're big enough that we can get away with just calling it 311. MyLA is really the context of the 311. That's the context of the app. What we're saying is, I living in city, I working in my city, call it my Los Angeles. I live there. Every one of you, if as soon as I ask you, will say, I'm from Minnesota. I'm from so and so. You have a certain amount of pride, certain amount of sort of association with your community. So you belong there, and you expect that relationship to extend across the platforms that you work with the city. And if you don't, then you'll probably treat it like, well, I'm just there. But even a visitor, when you go there, they tend to have that kind of a relationship that goes with it. And this may sound a little touchy-feely, but believe me, it makes a big difference. As I told you, if they don't use it the first time, they will never use the app. So you got to make sure. So MyLA is like a larger context in which we're building this. My Los Angeles is the sort of my agency, my platform, my Caltrans, whatever the appropriate agency name is. The idea is that in that context, 311 is an app, right? MyLA is our platform, 311 is our app. And in the 311 app, there are many features. So the feature where you can put a service request. Look at how much real estate we have. Why didn't we use it up? Why didn't we? It was very tempting to fill up with 17 more boxes there, but we didn't. The fact is that your thumb can't reach everywhere when you're doing that. Fact is that you can only do 2 or 3 things. Moreover, you can't have attention span. In New York 311, they have 17 little boxes there. So if you wanted to request like a illegal dumping, which one? Next page, looking for 17 things. But it doesn't do that, so it drives you. You use funneling technique, which drops you into a particular box. It's also a platform for making payments. Right now you can pay electricity bills and water bills out of this. Very soon parking, very soon housing bills. So basically it's one place to go to do that. It also is a platform for connecting with the city. Well, why would you connect with the city? Well, first, city wants to connect to you. So when we put it out there, of course, immediately we got lots of elected officials and everybody putting out the messages, saying, hey, my city is doing this, my city is that. We have the Twitter feed, we have the Facebook tweet, and also the YouTube, all consolidated putting out there. But very soon we found out that when there is actually a blockage somewhere in a traffic, people actually go to Twitter feed to find out, is something happening over there? Did city say something? And this morning somebody was walking by the booth and he was looking and he suddenly saw a tweet saying, hey, there's a delay on so-and-so train by 15 minutes, right? Suddenly people start looking at this as the place to get a consolidated feed from the city, right? Hey, we've got a big cyclovia going on, big cycle event coming up in 15 days. That's nice to know. And we realized by doing analytics that people were actually looking at it every morning. We have this whole statistic that says that between 6:30 and 8 o'clock, people look at this app. They somehow just turn it on, look at, is there something new happening in the city today? Many of them, I think, granted, are probably employees in the city. They just want to know, like, what is going on in the city. So it's interesting how a platform, which is only like 4 buttons here, seem to actually, convey a lot. There's a lot of functions behind it. But what's really important is integrated with a lot of things in the back. We're actually now integrating with the CRM system, which is a Siebel-based system that actually carries the whole case. Every case, there are 1,400 plus different types of service requests that we get in the city, but only 18 of them are here because most of them don't make sense. I mean, you're not going to request, let me see what the new tax law is for business on this. That's actually a knowledge-based search, which actually is coming. So there is actually, the mobiles are these two platforms for now. Middleware is Oracle or Java, depends on where there's a Hadoop cloud that it connects to and there. And then integration is also with, right now with GIS and with the CRM system. What's interesting is that then that system in turn connects with different departments. So we have a full life cycle of every single service request in the city coming soon, and we just push back to you. So let's say, here's my tree, please come and trim it. It gives you a number. Hey, here's your follow-up number. And it keeps you to know in your personal area. You go into my account and say, where is it? It'll also push it to you. Hey, I'm going to be there at 2 o'clock to trim your tree. Wouldn't it be nice if, like FedEx agent, the city told you, so therein lies the expectation that the citizen had based on their FedEx and UPS experience that now we have to reflect in our city, otherwise they won't use it. Coming back to the user experience. The future plan is we're going to go to authenticated and authenticated users. So they're going to be, if you're authenticated, you will actually be able to track it. Non-authenticated, you don't track it. But there's lots of people who don't want to get authenticated. They're from outside. I'm just reporting a graffiti. I don't really want to know what you do with it. And of course, it's integrated with case management and also. And a lot of effort goes into reporting and analytics at every stage of the city, both outbound analytics and also for operations. I don't want to keep saying that all the apps are not necessarily consumer facing. We all get caught up in mobile app and we say, oh, mobile is always consumer facing. The reality is the enterprise mobility has little to do operationally with the consumer facing. It's an entry point. So this is an app that's actually built also for Los Angeles City Housing Department. So this is the business requirement here is that post-disaster, the structural assessment that have to be done. So this actually, even if you know the term ATC 20 or ATC 45 or something, so what it means is that after an earthquake happens or a flood happens or a fire happens, you have to assess the habitability of the building or decide whether or not somebody should get in there. This used to be a paper-based process with a standard form. You fill it out, you turn it in. Now it's done in this. But the really important thing here was most of the times it's not used. But when it's needed, it really better be working. Okay, so it's actually deployed in the cloud. It's always there. It's updated to the latest property inventory in the city. So anything goes up, we actually put it back in there. Every night the inventory is kept and the system goes down. The system also has an ability to where if you had a really bad disaster, God forbid, we could actually stand up a single PC and actually work the whole system out of the PC. Every night that thing gets updated. So mobile apps could actually, and so it's a completely, so one of the key requirements was it has to be a store forward. Which means that, hey, I may not have any connection at all. I might have a major disaster on my hand. I need to do this. But no, the other important thing was that, hey, I need to be able to constantly manage changing forms. By the time I need this, the forms may have changed. I'm sure none of you know the forms don't change in your organization, I'm sure. The other is, it does have authenticated access. You don't want to give it to anybody. But the really key thing was this, minimum training of users. What do I mean by that? When there's a disaster that happens, all of us know when we have fires in California, what happens? People come in from other parts of the city, other parts of the state to help us, right? Other departments help us. They may have never seen this app and they have to use it. How will they use it if the app is not easy to use? So fundamentally, the user experience requirement is, if I dropped it in your hand with just maybe 2 sentences, you should start using it. If you don't, it's no use to me. And so I have that app here. If somebody wants to try it, you can try it on. If you ask me to more than 2 questions, then we fail. right? So the technology platform is iPad, the middleware is .NET. It's actually a cloud-based integration. It's heavily integrated. So this is an app that constantly gets integrated, constantly updates stuff, and never gets used, right? So don't think that apps only have to be something that people download a lot of and all that. It actually might be very different from what you think. This is a different customer. This is actually Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety. They permit about $3.5 billion worth of permits a year. The problem was, until about a year ago, most of the permits were done in person. You have to kind of walk up to the windows, 20 different places to go, very complicated process. So we started automating that so that actually you can go to the portal and any non-plan check-based permit now you can apply online. Okay, so that's about 70% of the permits you can do online if you want to. Just in the very first year, 20% of the permits moved online. Remember, I said $3.5 billion. 20% not necessarily in dollar terms, but it's still a huge number of people who don't come to the buildings for that. What started happening was that we started feeling a need from the contractors. They said, all this is great, but I'm never in the field with the laptop. I'm actually in my truck, or I'm actually at the site, and I want to know if my permit's been approved. Okay? So a user experience that was driven by a requirement from them turned into this app, which is actually built in Oracle middleware mobility suite here, which is, hey, this is how is my permit done? Then I do my work and say, hey, I want to schedule an inspection. 2 calls gone, right? Major savings, millions of calls we deal with permits, right? And then of course, the report started reporting. Hey, by the way, I want to add a report violation in that. This is an authenticated app, so we didn't want to keep rebuilding that, so it's actually a structure which grows. So again, a user experience that's actually driven by a need and very different from what consumer type of an approach to building that. So you can do a bunch of things that you can see over there. And of course, the technology platform is what I described. Where we're going with it is we're tying this back to the MyLA. Because we want everybody in the city of Los Angeles to have one single login and password. One login for the whole city, one password for the whole city. So if you're a customer of our city's utility, you don't have to get another one. Or you can use that across the city. So we're doing a federated identity management. So by mid next year, you'll require only one login and password for every single thing. And things like these will integrate back there. There's no need to have this permit inside the MyLA 311 app. Consumer has nothing to do with this. But they could use the utility, the authentication platform could be the same. Final, this is a different city, not from this state, kind of familiar to you. So Las Vegas, came to this and said, hey, we really love this stuff in Los Angeles, but here's what we don't like. And by this time we also learned a few things and said, okay, how do we do this differently? Well, first of all, they said, we are not sure all the departments are ready yet, but we don't want to get started. Okay, we like this idea of integrating a common platform. So we came up with this idea of something called, if they want a scalable platform across the city. Again, same issue, almost all agencies have the same issue. Hey, I don't want to have this proliferation of apps that are hard to maintain. Given that you're updating them every 2-3 weeks anyway, I can't have 17 of them being updated at the same time. And of course, then the reduction of volume is the same issue for them. So we came with this concept of application carousel. Fancy name for apps, right? So what happens when you go to, how many of you know Game Center in iPhone, right? So you are like me, play games all the time. So what it is this is really a kind of a little walled garden around Las Vegas. It's got a common mobility suite around it, common authentication, and apps just get popped up. If you came by, I'll show you, it actually scrolls when you do this. New apps keep coming up, so new circles keep coming up. We can also disable them. If you're a city employee, you see a few that others don't, like City Directory. I won't see it because I don't work there, right? But the city only deployed one app. So what it is like it's an iPhone and an iPhone, or Android and an Android. We actually develop a platform within which people are then releasing their own apps in the departments. How many of you relate to this fact that departments go out and build their own thing, right? And they say, well, how do I bring this back in? How do I make this part of a larger thing? Well, if they had the freedom to still do that and still be part of a family, I think they would be, because they'd benefit from the common platform that comes with it. Again, this is a huge component of user experience. And how little have I talked about how it looks? Because it's really not about that. It's really about the requirements of the user experience by making that consistent use. And so that's really what user experience is about. As you can see, this is actually a very heavily integrated application. There are some very interesting apps in this one. Since it's Las Vegas, I think we can get away with it. Carlos there is smiling already. So we went to Las Vegas and said, what would be like a good app to build for you guys? He says, where's Bob? So what does that mean? He says, well, where's Bob means, every morning we get all these calls about saying, hey, my so-and-so came here and he's in jail. Which jail is he in? Okay. So, and you're laughing, but this is actually true. Okay, so people call in the morning and say, where is so-and-so? There is actually a service in the city of Las Vegas where they have to find out where is so-and-so. Last night, whatever stays in Vegas sort of stays in Vegas. So the point is that that's a kind of a strange app, but it is an app that actually people could take advantage of. What if this platform could be extended to other people to build these apps? So that becomes kind of the next frontier. And once you create an environment like that, Where's Bob is not an app the city is likely to build. They might provide a service to build the app, but they would like that maybe somebody else goes out and builds that. There might be somebody. Now, of course, you probably don't want to make a hotel app out of that. That's probably extending it too much. And of course, if you go to Las Vegas and you type it in your iTunes store or Play Store, there are no less than 500 apps that call themselves Las Vegas apps. So how will you know which is the proper app? And so that's, again, this sort of proliferation problem is solved through this. So I just wanted to bring your attention to some of these user experience things. This thing's over. What I want to do is now stop and ask questions while I just spin up a. Any questions while I do this? Yes, please. Right. So that's kind of the next frontier for us. Okay. So when we did this Los Angeles app, so here you see the app running. Here actually almost all these elements are actually managed by the city itself. Okay. These apps are, so even as we add other departments, we actually have to work with these, right? But let me spin up Las Vegas app and watch how that goes. It just looks like there are lots of little apps coming up. There's nothing that says that one of those circles couldn't be a partner. It couldn't be another department that actually could go ahead and build its app that we integrate back. That's part of what we are working on, is creating this, walled garden, kind of like a game center has this app model also, that says, all right, you can build whatever game you want, but you can access it through the game center, or you can actually keep your scores in the game center. So it actually validates you through a common identity management, for example, keeps the security around it that's common. So a lot of common elements can be the same.
This one that useful to for like the state of California, because if you had one master portal, you could have different agencies.
This is true. Right. And part of the common platform idea is that, for example, we use a common GIS platform. So there are the things that we couldn't see because of dark on dark thing before, was that we have what are the common elements in an organization like that. Common identity management is number one. Right? So you have a single block. So that creates personalization that's common. So every app actually shares that information. Common GIS system. Why would you authenticate here a location from here and then again from another GIS system? And all of us know how dreadful it is to go and find out two different GIS systems to work with each other. Then preferences. I might have certain preferences of language, for example. We are also looking at multilingual apps. So hey, if I'm a Spanish app user, why do I have to constantly keep telling you that I'm using a Spanish app? Or let's say that I've got a certain location preference. My child goes to school in North Hollywood. Well, that's where I want to know where the outages happen. That's when I want to know if there is a traffic issue there. Why do I need to keep on constantly putting that in? So now every app in that sub-universe can take advantage of that. That comes from the authentication part. So GIS, authentication. Then of course there are these 508 type of things that you wanna do. Is that a common approach towards ADA compliance, for example? Why would you repeat that? Why would you not just build it out? Apps have to be just as compliant as anything else, right? Multilingual platforms, some of these middleware platforms will support that. So all these things are common. Then sort of extends a little bit further into the how you manage business workflows and all that. So that's where the common platform comes from. And of course, the real issue is also that, let's say I want to change the look and feel of the city for the Christmas that's coming up, or next year we're going to a new platform, we're adding hamburger menus because that's the new thing, we're going to a flat look. How difficult is that to do across 17 different apps? It's much better to have a common, you might call CSS files. If it's a hybrid approach, you might. So providing a lot of freedom to people who are actually going to be participating as partners, and yet keeping that sort of a common platform. That's really the key for doing sort of user experience across a very large organization. Any questions? Yes, please.
So how do you have to download only one app, and then with the multiple sections in it get updated automatically, or every time something new gets added, I have to download the app again or download an update again? How is that?
Okay, good question. So the question is whether you update the app every single time, or you both happen. Okay, there are some instances in where you actually do have to download a new app, but it actually pushes you, right? Like we talked about it, updates just happen now. But there is actually another thing that happens. Part of the platform that we are looking around is also managing the deployment and management of remote apps. So for example, you work for the city, but now tomorrow is your last day, and I want to actually disable data just for that app. I mean, you're still a citizen, you still live here. So how do I take out just that portion of the app? So that actually happens in-app, right? So there's an in-app ability to do that, and there is sort of the out-of-app, where the things that actually fundamentally change the app structure itself, those come through updates. Yep. Any questions? All right, so we got a few minutes. Yes? Oh, well, then do you want to see the app a little bit more? Okay. I don't have where's Bob? Although it may be coming. So I urge you all to go to LA City's booth there. You can try it out yourself. So this is actually the platform, and what I wanted to show you was it's a very simple platform. This is the service request part where you can say, okay, where's the illegal dumping going on? Then take a picture of the illegal dumping, all that stuff. And you can put in a service request. You can authenticate yourself as you go along. So I could go to next and say, I didn't provide a location. By the way, the location testing will check if you're actually in city of Los Angeles or not. So outside, the territories are very complicated around LA because the jurisdictions change. So one of the key things in these things is jurisdiction validation type of stuff, not just geographically I'm here. So that's one. It's also a platform where you go and pay. That's actually your water bill payment in Los Angeles. You can actually pay electric and water. Notice that it talks about where the service centers are, where the outages are, and contact us. Again, no need to tell about all the things. If you go to the full site, it's too much. These are all the resources around the city. So these are actually GIS located resources around you, or you could actually look for something. Where are the libraries? What is a library? So there's a plaza. Okay, how do I call that? You can connect you to the site. There might be a sub-site that it launches. It could actually be another app that launches from that if you want. A sub-app could come out of this. Actually linking all that stuff could be very interesting. And finally, the social platform. So you've got the Twitter feed coming through. The top few are showing here, but then after that you can go and look at the whole Twitter feed. It's actually a consolidated feed from different departments. So all the general manager levels and city mayor and elected officials, they all get consolidated into single. We also tag a lot of stats on that. One interesting thing about these social platforms is, first people thought, hey, well, let's just put up some YouTube videos, about some information about the news, all that stuff. What people are finding out in the departments is that people use these particular videos for all sorts of things. Hey, this is how you apply for a permit. People prefer a how-to video to a how-to page. Because they can look it up, they can set it on the side and work on it. All sorts of reasons. You might be in the field when you're doing this. So very creatively using this, an event is coming up. There might be a preamble to that you can put out as a video. So actually, cities using this in a very creative ways and turning out that it's a very useful channel. And increasingly, we find every day users get on just to find out what's going on in the city, and this is the platform they choose to come to, and from there they launch off. So it's a good. Okay. So I definitely urge you to go and try. Of course, you never forget that people still will always call you. Okay, and they shouldn't have to look for the phone number. They should be able to do that. And of course, this is a push notified platform. When you actually start the platform, it'll ask you, do you want me to push stuff to you? In the next generation, when we go to authenticated version, you can actually personalize the push notifications. But right now, it's just very minimal push that comes through. Any questions around this platform and how it was built? Okay. All right, then let's look at this. So this, as I said, is a carousel. This actually is sort of a little bit of an evolution on top of that. This is built in Oracle's ADF mobile platform. Both middleware is Oracle mobile, but also the app itself is built using ADF mobile. And so once you build it, it's compiled out to a number of things. That in itself is not the reason to yeah, there you go. What would be a demo if it didn't do that? All right. So again, it's got the payment platform. It's got the About Us, I think, the request plan. So one of the things that you'll see here that's a little bit different is here you actually already are tracking your requests. There are none submitted from here. It's already able to track. In the previous one, we couldn't do that. So some new stuff there. I think I mentioned one more. This is also this is the other app that also came out of LA. This is actually built in ADF mobile as well. And again, the goal here is that once you apply for permit, so the experience is actually continuous across a portal and a mobile. So you might apply for the permit in person by hand or through a portal, but then the same experience continues, and actually you might fulfill the steps later on. One of the common things that happens in this particular experience is that, God. No, what good is it? I left it on because I wanted to have the internet connection. I kept saying, I gotta go to the airplane mode. And so, anyways, sorry about that. So again, this is the idea was a continuous experience. All right, thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.